The Simpsons is the longest-running animated show in history with 768 episodes as of 2024. However, one of the most beloved characters in the fan base is the legend himself, Hans Moleman. Now, in the world of The Simpsons, Moleman has to be the unluckiest guy in Springfield. Or is he? An online theory suggests that Hans Moleman is not a human like the rest, or most, of Springfield. Although he dies in most of his appearances, he always manages to come back and take on a whole new job.
I didn't want to cause a fuss, but now that you mention it...
Okay, so he's unkillable. But then we've seen so many episodes where Homer or some other character is basically maimed to the point of death and then nothing really happens. They just bounce back.
Oh, no! That's why I had my shirt!
So why is Moleman so special? Well, according to this theory, it's because he's an ancient race of people, the Mole Men, who live underneath Springfield and occasionally burrow to the surface to take the place of the last Moleman. Basically, it's just a big, never-ending cycle of Mole Men. But does it hold up? Let's take a look at some context, starting from the episode that kickstarted this whole theory. In the season 13 episode, Sweets and Sour Marge, Homer gets a copy of the Duff World Record book and becomes obsessed with the idea of breaking a world record himself.
I'm here to break a world record. What's the longest anyone's ever done this?
He settles on making the world's tallest human pyramid and recruits the residents of Springfield to help him. But just as they're about to break the record, Jimbo and Kearney mess up and bring the whole pyramid down. In the chaos, the pyramid somehow turns into a giant sphere of people rolling through the town. Actually, it's kind of like that scene in Indiana Jones with the boulder, but more violent somehow. Anyways, the boulder rolls through Springfield and basically crushes everyone it encounters, including Hans Moleman. And Agnes Skinner, but who cares about her when we have Moleman? Anyway, the giant human ball eventually rolls into a truck weighing station where the record officially announces Springfield has indeed broken a world record for the world's fattest town, a record towns in the USA have broken a long time ago. It's not the achievement they wanted, but hey, a record's a record. Now, if we go back for a second and take a look at the scene where Moleman is crushed by the giant ball, you'll notice something interesting. While we see Moleman in the forefront of the frame, you can also see him in the ball. He's already there, which clearly suggests that there's more than one Hans Moleman. So what gives? Well, it makes a lot of sense that there would be more than one, given the incredible amount of deaths, resurrections, and jobs that Moleman has had over the course of the show's 30-something seasons. There's just no way that one person could survive that many accidents, murders, and unintentional suicides only to wake up the next day and shift into a new career. In fact, let's talk about the many jobs of Hans Moleman. The closest that the show ever gets to showing Moleman as anything but an elderly old creature is in the season 26 episode, Walking Big and Tall. The episode opens with a flashback from 30 years earlier showing that Hans Moleman was once the mayor of Springfield, and he looks nothing like the Moleman we know. He looks like your typical suspicious mayor character, but he's charming and energetic, and his voice is completely different.
One thing our blessed little town has lacked: a human zoo.
Now, 30 years is a long time, but it's not really enough to send him from looking like this guy to an adorable wrinkled old peanut, as Homer later calls him.
Give it a try, like kissing a peanut.
And it's important to note that Hans Moleman himself once claimed to be
I'm 31 years old.
but aged by years of heavy drinking.
Drinking has ruined my life.
So his age is very questionable, especially because if he is 31 in the show's elastic timeline, then going back 30 years would make him 1 year old when he was mayor. So yeah, no, even for a cartoon, I think we're pushing it. However, outside of the mayoral gig, Moleman has had an unthinkable amount of jobs, more than any other resident of Springfield, even Homer. Episodes have shown him working as a truck driver, a janitor at the power plant, a teacher of an orange eating class, a hot dog vendor, a solar power salesman, and an actor in the masterpiece Man Getting Hit by Football. So how can one 31 to 200-year-old man shift from one job to the next so quickly with seemingly no training or downtime in between? And more importantly, how does he survive the seemingly never-ending deaths he suffers every time? Great question. Let's take a look at that point, actually. In Season 7's Team Homer, there's a brief scene where Molman, working as a janitor, asks Burns for some money for upgraded equipment. Unfortunately, Burns is hallucinating that Molman is a leprechaun and welcomes him into his office only to drill into Molman's brain. I mean, that's pretty dark, sure, but it's also a death that nobody could make it out of. Molman even says,
"Oh no, my brains."
So the deaths we're talking about here are not the kind of thing that anyone could survive. I mean, he's been eaten by wolves, alligators, and he's been crushed by an asteroid, an exploding whale, and a block of concrete. He's been run over by multiple characters, including Homer, 3 times. He's been buried alive, executed in the electric chair, drowned in the ocean, and set on fire by the sun. I mean, there's just no way any one person could survive that much misfortune. In total, Molman has been killed at least 42 times in the entirety of the show's history, including the movie, where he once again got run over by Homer. So it makes sense that there would be many Molman ready to take over for whichever one just got murdered. And it's not like the show hasn't set up that secret societies exist. In the Season 6 episode, Homer the Great, Homer discovers that 2 of his co-workers are part of an ancient secret society known as the Stonecutters. After learning that his own father is a member, Homer gets to join and discovers that the Stonecutters are the geniuses behind pretty much everything in the world. Eventually, Homer rises to become the leader of the Stonecutters, but finds that life at the top is extremely lonely. After taking advice from Lisa, Homer makes the Stonecutters perform volunteer work. In response, the Stonecutters disband and form a new society called the Ancient Mystic Society of No Homers. This episode basically confirms that Springfield already has at least one secret society, which is capable of pulling incredible strings without anyone knowing anything about it. So there's a precedent for this kind of thing in Springfield. And the show even provides its own evidence to back up the multiple Molman theory. In the Season 11 episode Hello Gutter, Hello Fodder, Homer becomes a local celebrity after bowling a perfect game, but his desperate effort to try and keep up this level of fame backfires pretty miserably. Eventually, he feels like his life has peaked after his fame disappears, so he tries to off himself. But as soon as Homer jumps from the building, he regrets his decision and clings to Otto, who's bungee jumping from the same building. Their combined weight sends them deeper and deeper into an open manhole where they pass the Morlocks, the Chuds, and the Mole People led by Hans Molman. Wait, what? Yeah. Hans Molman is there beside an earthquake machine ruling over a race he calls the Mole People. Now, it's not exactly like the theory we're talking about, and it's actually a very niche reference to an old 1956 movie called The Mole People, which, well, it's not really worth looking into. But what does this mean? Let's assume that it's true and there is an endless race of Hans Molman to take to the surface to continue the work of the one before. What exactly would they get out of this? Why do they keep returning to Springfield just to suffer more tragedy? I think I might have an explanation. In the Season 22 episode, Homer Scissorhands, there's a brief joke that sees Lisa stumbling onto a date between lunch lady Doris and Hans Molman. Molman suggests that they're trying to rekindle their relationship. I think you can interpret this in 2 ways. Either this Molman has just been dating Doris for a while, or this Molman is trying to work through the aftermath of the previous Molman. I think the second one is more interesting, of course. But just think about it. We're talking about an endless cycle of Molman. One dies, another takes his place to keep up the illusion that he's the same person. That kind of suggests that every Molman is completely new to this world and has to work to try and understand what the last one did. This would explain why the Molman are constantly taking new jobs. They're trying to work out what the last Molman did. So in that scene between Doris and Molman, we could be looking at a brand new Molman trying to work out what this relationship with Doris was or could be. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm overthinking at this point, but there's something about a weird Groundhog Day style loop with Molman at the heart of it that just fascinates me. Anyway, I think that would also explain the super young Molman we saw as mayor. He could possibly be the first, the original Molman that successfully breached the surface and succeeded in Springfield. They're all trying to keep up the example that he set to repeat his success. Unfortunately, they've all become much less charming and attractive repetitive and have become increasingly peanutty. And as I mentioned before, the people of Springfield don't even seem to care about Molman or his well-being, presumably because his death has been reported so many times that they just assume there will be another one to take his place. Does that make every resident of Springfield psychopathic? Absolutely. But there are also episodes where they just take advantage of Molman because they can. In the season 5 episode, Burns' Heir, Mr. Burns almost drowns while taking a bath and realizes he has nobody to carry on his legacy when he dies. So Burns sets out to find an heir to inherit his fortune and settles on Bart after he vandalizes Burns' mansion and demonstrates pure malevolence. Homer and Marge eagerly sign away their son to Burns, hoping to get a share of the fortune after the old man's death. But when Bart abandons the family, Homer and Marge sue Burns to get him back and lose the case due to their incompetent lawyer. In a last-ditch effort to get their son back, the Simpsons hire a professional cult deprogrammer to kidnap Bart and decondition him from Burns' side. Instead, the deprogrammer kidnaps Hans Molman and convinces him that he's the child of the Simpsons.
Do not love Mr. Burns. You love Homer and Marge.
And despite it being blatantly false, Homer fully comes to love and embrace him as his own child, even introducing Bart to his brother.
And now I want you to meet your new brother, Hans Moleman.
Cowabunga, dudes.
Honestly, this little plot thread and Marge's description of Molman as a thing just shows that Molman is basically a prop to the people of Springfield. Nobody really thinks of him as anything but an item to hit, burn, crush, murder, maim, kidnap, brainwash, you get the picture. When there are thousands of them underneath Springfield, why should they really bother to care about him in any real way, right? Look, The Simpsons has never been a show that's really cared about continuity or, frankly, logic. But I could 100% believe that Hans Molman is part of some kind of weird ancient race of mole men whose existence just revolves around being Molman. That's just the kind of weird niche joke that the Simpsons writers would love. The fact that the only job of the Molman is to get killed is just the perfect cherry to an already solid joke. So yes, I've officially convinced myself that the theory is accurate. The Stonecutters disbanded so that the Molman could finally run Springfield the way they wanted. Or maybe Molman is just one clueless guy who's destined to suffer for all eternity and who's always going to get hit by a football. I don't know, man. I just like cartoons.